The first sound wasn't the blink. It was the second lock failing to catch. A soft miss, like a throat clearing in the wrong church. Carter froze halfway to middle C. The house should have been sealed. He'd armed it himself. Sun threw a thin bar across the piano lid, shallow winter light glancing off old varnish. He didn't move. He counted. 1 breath. 2. The room holding its air like a secret. "Don't talk," Maya whispered from the doorway. She was 9. Sleeve ends over fingers. Tablet already blue against her chest. Her hair was still wet from the shower. She took too fast. The way kids do when they don't want to admit they were cold. "Something's awake in the den," she said. "Not ours." Then the blink cold, insect blue where crown met paint, small enough to doubt, arrogant enough not to. Carter kept his hands where a camera would see them and turned his head like a man listening to weather. Lavender hung in the air, Vanessa's, though she insisted it wasn't. "If I trip the alarm, they'll know you're here," he said, voice too low to echo. "If you trip it, they'll know they should run," Maya said. Forced choice. He picked the uglier one, silence with teeth. He eased the fallboard down with a fingertip. No sound, the room swallowing the gesture like a lie it wanted to keep. "Where?" "Vent in the den. New dust," she said, and behind the painting she brought. He stepped to the abstract skyline. Vanessa had called times softness asterisk, lifted it, drywall tan line. A lens the size of a freckle, pretending to be a screw. His jaw clicked. Off to the right, where molding met paint. A faint crescent of spackle had dried too bright. A band-aid on a face that didn't know where to look, somewhere deeper in the house. A hinge complained one note, then obedience. The floor plan printed itself in his head, a grid of sight lines and blind pockets, rooms that told the truth at certain angles and lied at others. Whoever had been inside knew where to stand, to stay out of his cameras, and inside his life. "Do you trust me?" Maya asked. "No drama, just inventory." He looked at the piano key he used when panic needed a name. Middle C, a hinga between halves. "We do this together," he said. "Kiet." The cabinet panels slid under his thumb. The server woke with a low animal hum. Indifferent to owners, Maya tethered her tablet. Code marched clean, small, ruthless. The map resolved to a starfield of nodes. Off-site roll call, hourly, a hub with manners, latencies that breathed like a guilty person telling the truth too slow. He should call the police. He should call Vanessa. He called neither. The hallway took a knuckle, soft, polite. Josephine cracked the door with a look that knew storms and how to set a table around them. "I never liked that woman's smile," she said. "It doesn't meet her eyes. Normal until I say otherwise," he said. "I can set a table with a knife under it," she said, and left the door a little open, on purpose. They moved room to room the way you move around a sleeping animal. In the den, the vent screws wore new scars. Philip's heads kissed by a driver that didn't love them. In the guest room, a frame sat a quarter-inch off level in a house where he could grab any book without looking. In the bedroom, baseboard paint wore a fresh scratch that pretended to be older than it was. He bagged the office lens, cheap evidence sleeve, black Sharpie squeaking date and time across a seam. Chain of custody wasn't just for judges. It kept your own head honest. Back at the desk, he built a decoy folder and named it the way impatience names its children. Asterisk, asterisk, William O.S. Mesh. Final. Final, asterisk, asterisk. He salted it with mock logs, in a voice that sounded like his. Maya laced a watermark into the file's shadow. A hair-thin thread. You couldn't screenshot and couldn't digest without leaving a signature. Screenshots don't carry it, she said, more to herself than him. Consumption writes the confession. Make it pretty enough to brag about, he said. She smiled. A fast glitch. Miles likes a certain loop off by one on ranges. He thinks it's elegant. You can spot it. It squeaks when it turns, she said. I'll put it in the bait. See if he can resist himself. He almost said, "You're 9. He didn't. She had already found cameras in his house. Age wasn't the right unit of measure anymore. Footsteps. Keys in a dish. The scent of scarf lavender announced Vanessa half a second before she stepped in. Smile set to the right wattage for domestic light. There you are, she said. You left a message like a riddle. I brought dinner. Maya ghosted into the hallway shadow the way children do when survival is a skill. Josephine arrived with plates that didn't clatter. Carter let his face be something gentle. His pulse did math. They ate, or pretended to. Vanessa told a story about a client with too much budget and not enough imagination. He nodded at the right beats and watched where her eyes went when silence landed the vent. The painting, the door jamb, with a new nick. The map on the console bled a faint pulse. Somewhere a hub counted time zones and chose a minute to be present. After, the house dimmed to the hour when people try on safety like a shirt. Water upstairs, drawer slide, fabric whisper. Down here, hum and blue. Carter sat at the piano and pressed middle C. The note climbed, touched the ceiling, came back heavier than it went up. You're not sleeping, Maya said from the doorway. Not tonight. Me neither. She slid onto the bench, shoulder grazing his sleeve. No apology. In the logs, she said. Miles's phone shows near the den at weird hours. He's not as careful as he thinks. Miles liked answers in his mouth, he said. He chewed them. Then give him something chewy, she said, and leaned into the screen's light. At 10:43, the den vent ticked, a sound you miss if you believe in coincidence. The hub woke, Maya's watermark brightened, not content. Just the envelope moving through hands that couldn't resist touching. He texted Reed the way you slap a palm against a door. Quiet eyes. No uniforms. Reed arrived as if he lived in the woodwork. 2 men with him, case lids opening to foam, scales, clean gloves. They moved with the economy of people who asked air for permission. Perimeter, Reed said. Scanners sang, soft and pleased. Photos took truth without flinching. Evidence sleeves opened their plastic mouths. Let them eat, Carter said. They let them. At 11. Should see. The back door key turned in a rhythm Carter recognized from older kitchens. Miles walked in with the shoulders of a man who'd been told he was gifted and believed it held up in rooms with art. Vanessa followed in slippers and a face that practiced forgiveness. Forgot a folder, Miles said lightly. Back shelf, Carter said, and stayed where he could read the whole room at once. The bait executed in a sandbox that felt like flattery. Maya's thread, stitched time, and device to movement. A ledger wrote itself to worm, indifferent and clean. The right blocker's LED held steady as a nurse on a night shift. On the wall screen, an endpoint in Midtown flared. Then another, the kind of handoffs you see when greed socializes. Carter opened the den door and stepped in like a stranger who knew where the rug would wrinkle. Find what you needed. Vanessa's smile reached for the corners and came back empty. We were just helping, he said. Reed filled the doorway. No badges, just that soft authority that makes rooms remember paperwork exists. Josephine stood by the kitchen threshold with a dish towel like a flag. No country deserved. Carter tapped the wall screen. The room watched itself angles. Hands. Small tells. The watermark stamp sat neat in the corner, a witness that didn't need adjectives. You bugged me, Vanessa said. accusation as mirror. You bugged me, he said. I introduced you to a mirror. Miles half stood, then gravity negotiated. He sat back down. A lifetime of ramen, steam, and exam blues and borrowed certainty ran behind his eyes like subtitles he couldn't turn off. Read dates and times into the cuff mic. A plastic crackle. A form signed. No theater. You won't make this stick. Vanessa said. To the table. To the air. To the future. They always walk. Josephine said, soft as a prayer. Sometimes they don't choose where. The mudroom door closed on two shapes and took the noise with it. The house exhaled. The server breathed. Carter went to the piano and pressed middle C. The note rose, wore the night, and returned. Maya stayed at the console, eyes older by a shade. The hub's still polling, she said. Hourly. It doesn't care about cuffs. We do, he said. He looked at the painting back on its hooks, that false river in cobalt. He thought of the little lens in a clear bag, air trapped over it, the Sharpie date that would outlive a story anyone wanted to tell. Reed leaned a hip on the desk, the case by his shoe. You want uniforms? He asked. Or do we keep this a quiet church for another hour? Kiet, Carter said. We deliver in the morning. Reed nodded. Pleased by paper. You finally got religion, he said. Carter almost smiled. I got motive. They worked until the printer coughed its last page, and the worm spit its faint heat. Reed sealed and signed. Marcus answered on speaker from a room with dawn bruising the blind. The plan fit on neat paper. Notify the U.S. attorney. Freeze the path. Let the capture keep knitting a net greed wouldn't see until it felt it. Sometime after 1, when walls in old houses decide whether to crack or hold, Carter crossed the hall and nearly stepped on it. The thing he wouldn't see if he weren't the man who now looks down whenever the quiet gets too precise. Heavy linen, dark wax, a butterfly pressed with its wings shut. No stamp, no address. He didn't open it. Not yet. He wrote the time on the envelope. Small habit turned liturgy, and slid it under the piano lid, where wood made everything sound like a secret. A hinge waiting for a door. The house listened. The pool pump thudded once outside like a patient heart. Somewhere upstairs, a radiator ticked its metronome. Maya drew 2 half-moons in her breath on the glass and watched them vanish. The night held. It would let go in the morning. Chain starts now. Reed's voice threaded the study without raising itself. Late light lay cold on walnut. Glove snaps whispered like rain. The Sharpie squeaked across tamper tape date. Time. Location. His block letters squared so a judge could nap and still trust them. The scanner purred along crown molding and baseboard, as if reading braille from the house's skin. Maya's tablet glowed night sky blue on the credenza. Her interface skinned to a planetarium nodes, pulsing like patient stars, roots of faint lattice. Recorder live, she said, and the little mic blinked a calm green. Ledger mounted read-only. Worm mirrors primed. Carter didn't sit. He kept one palm on the desk, where heat had polished the wood smooth, the other on his ribs, as if holding the breath he'd need later. The office smelled of lemon oil and anxious coffee. In the corner, the piano's lid sat closed like a kept promise. They dimmed half the lamps. The room went to hush and outline. Reed's 2 texts drifted through the hallways on soft soles. Camera scales and evidence flags tucked into vest pockets. Downstairs, the server hummed the low, unafraid vowel of machines that never sleep. Ready, Maya said. Bait in sandbox. Watermark stitched under the checksum. Consumption rights. The confession. Let them come to it, Reed said. No Chovy lights. Sure. 43 p.m. brought a draft to the nape. The kind you only feel once you're listening for it. On Maya's screen, a midtown node flared arterial red. The decoy stepped off its ledge with polite arrogance, handshakes too neat, throughput numbers purring like they'd been rehearsed. "Mark," she murmured. Reed slid a sterile SSD into a write blocker the size of a paperback. The light went steady orange. "Hash rolling," he said, and read numbers into the mic like a catechism. The laser printer on the sideboard coughed warm paper columns of math nobody could sweet-talk. A second endpoint lit, then a third arrogance, replicating like a rumor in a crowded bar. The map forked. One path hopped to a cloud broker, with brochures that wore ethics like a scarf. The other slipped through a boutique consultancy with 4 employees and a Cayman mailing address that believed in air conditioning. "Let them brag," Reed said, eyes on the thread, voice without heat. Maya's watermark stitched under the traffic, invisible and sure. She tucked a stray coil of hair into the hood of her sweatshirt, thumbed a slider that pulled the lattice into sharper relief. "Midpoint at 57 Street Block," she said. "Enterprise build. Maintenance window not open. Someone's hungry." On the wall, the painting that once hid a lens looked past them, more surface than river now. Carter kept still. He thought of doors, of hinges, of the small choices that make big ones inevitable. The first copy sealed, Reed signed across the seam. "Deliberate, Nate. Copy 1 of 2, he announced to the room, chain intact. A ghost process tapped their outer shell. The alert made a flick of sound more throat-clear than alarm. On Maya's console, a tiny terminal bloomed. "What is that?" Carter said. "Too quick." "Enumeration," Maya said. "It's Polita. Curious." "Wrong." Her hands hovered without touching. "It's skating the fence." The process sniffed the dev mirror, earned a hiss, slunk off. It nosed an admin share named in the vocabulary of the sleepless, then it paused on a partition labeled with 4 block letters that did not belong on this map. "Fam." The room tilted half a degree. You could hear the server deepen its breath. You could hear your own. Maya's eyes slid to him and away, as if she'd looked at a bruise and decided not to name the color. "It shouldn't see that," she said. "Document," Marcus said on speaker calm. Insistent, a priest who believed in ink. "If it exists, it gets handled." No speeches. Carter walked. Reed moved to block him, reconsidered, stepped aside. The cage recognized his code and pretended this was an ordinary night. Metal-kissed glove. The drive caddy wore his handwriting on white tape. "Archive of family." He lifted it. Cold sank through nitrile and bone. On the aluminum, his breath fogged an oval that briefly returned his face another house. Older wood, a lake that had been theirs until it wasn't. "Authorization to destroy media," Reed said, already producing the form. The pen clicked. Paper waited. Marcus's voice from the phone. "Sign now, or wish you had." Carter signed. Reed countersigned. The degausser came out of its foam like a small beast that had learned obedience, coil gleaming. Switch stubborn. They set the drive on the nest. "Last chance," Reed said. "It had its chances," Carter answered. He hit the switch. Field rose. The coil sang low. The hair on his forearms stood like bristles saluting. Ozone burned the back of the throat. Hot varnish added a music. Store. Ghosts. Note. Screws jittered loose and pinged across the steel like little bells. A faceplate rattled off and skittered under the bench. The needle climbed, held, fell, again. Again. On the third pass, the thing went heavy. Its small internal forever shuddered. The smell would live in his jacket for a month. "Bag," Marcos said. Reed slid the carcass into a red-lipped sleeve. Heat sealed the seam and wrote, "Destroyed," in black block letters that dented the next page. Maya hadn't moved. She watched the terminal window still and go quiet. Sniff stopped. She said, "Door turned wall. We're clean." Carter put both hands flat on the bench and let the cold teach his palms what it costs to keep a promise. He didn't say sorry to anyone. He didn't say anything at all. Upstairs, the capture kept knitting. On the map, a manager aborted mid-sip session torn short. Fear leaving a measurable shape. A boutique came and Hop blushed, steadied, pretended normal. "Mark the flinch," Carter said, voice even again. "Juries like nerves." The lights dipped a heartbeat, not two, then held. Somewhere under the river, continuity power hiccuped the way a liar swallows. Reed's phone buzzed once, the unwired one. "Basement that swears it doesn't exist, just blink," he said, satisfied without smiling. "Second mirror," Maya said. Reed fed the drive. "Read the hash." Sealed the clear bag that crinkled like truth. The brass hasp of the lockbox closed on both, with a tidy kiss. A hinge gleamed. "Courier at 8 government shoes. Gray windbreaker," Reed said. "He'll sign like he means it." "Make him," Marcus said. They let the run taper to ears. Only the ledger ticked in the corner of the screen, like a metronome for patience. The house racked itself back onto its bolts. Josephine set 4 cups in the hall and did not enter the room. The smell of cinnamon rode the air to the door and stopped. "Time," Reed said. 23:59. Maya wrote it on the board beside a small sketch. 2 arcs joined at a thin line. "Wings." Barely. She erased them and wrote again. Carter's eye kept catching the hinge. "Downstairs." Reed said, "We close it in the vault." The vault breathed cold and ion. Fluorescence whined at an insect pitch. The concrete held last winter like a grudge. They rolled the cart to the bench. Reed unlocked the locker sized for honesty and placed the box inside. The brass clicked. The echo came back once, mild and absolute. Maya split her screen ledger left. Map right. The worm device's right light pulsing in peripheral vision like a slow heartbeat. She chewed once on the inside of her cheek and caught herself. "Final hashes match," she said. "No drift." The printer hacked out the last page and fell still. Reed stacked the output maps, logs, route diagrams. You could show a room and get nods without adjectives. He slid the bundle into a folder like old letters. "Courier," he said. A knock rattled the roll-up. A kid with windburn and a beanie stood in the frame, messenger strap cutting his jacket. He looked at the box, the way people look at sleeping animals, fond, afraid to touch. "You'll sign for this," Marcus said through the phone, each word deliberate, like he wanted the syllables to leave fingerprints. The kid signed with his whole name and today's date, proud of his handwriting. Reed photographed his hand, and the line, habit, insurance, faith. When the door shut, quiet flowed back like cold water. The coil still smelled of the thing it had ended. On the steel bench, a crescent of magnetic dust glittered under harsh light like crushed wing. Carter touched it with 2 fingers, left a gray smear, did not wipe it away. They rode up in the service elevator that smelled of bleach and apology. The doors parted onto a corridor bright with tired linoleum. Upstairs, the house had learned to hold heat again. Dawn thinned the dark at the edges of windows. Streetlights yawned out. In the kitchen, Josephine had left a plate of toast and a note under the peach magnet. Asterisk, "Eat, then be brave." Asterisk. Carter broke a corner, chewed. Let the dry scrape settle thought. His mouth tasted of iron and nutmeg. The piano waited. He lifted the fallboard and set one finger on middle C. The note climbed the room and came back wearing coil smell and lemon. Changed, but still itself. He held it until it thinned to memory. Courier made the turn, Reed said from the hall, watching the driveway through the sidelights. We're in the system now. They'll try to make it theater. Marcus said, we'll make it paperwork. Maya stood at the window and drew two fogged wings with the side of her finger, then wiped them away, leaving the pane clear. He'll say we lit our own lobby on fire, she said, meaning the man who'd offered a river and a price for remembering. We lit the room so we could see, Carter said. They sat for a beat, hands quiet, breath even, the held note feeling that follows, choosing. Outside, the pool cover looked like a drumhead stretched tight. A bird tried the day and changed its mind. Somewhere deep in the wall, a copper pipe ticked its private metronome. Maya slid her tablet into its sleeve. They'll bite again, she said. Not a hope, an expectation. They will, Reed said. Hunger and habit are cousins. Carter closed the piano. The hinge whispered like a confession no one needed to hear. He touched the lid nick near center, old scar, and looked at his hand until it steadied. From now on, he said, we move like the room is recording. It is, Maya said, and the corner of her mouth flicked. Dry, earned. The house learned its daylight. The brass on the lockbox cooled. In the vault below, the smear of dust waited for the next fluorescent to catch it. In the office, the maps curled a little as warm air woke paper. The chain held. Outside, morning lifted, thin and unsentimental. The plan, no longer theory, had weight. And somewhere under the river, a basement that denied it existed remembered for a heartbeat that it did. Morning put a lid on the house. Gray light, thin as paper, pressed against the panes and held. The server behind the wall kept its low vow. The wood polish in the study gave off lemon and old heat. Carter stood by the window with his jacket folded over his arm and his name already turning into paperwork. On the credenza, the lockbox weighted brass hasp bright as a dare. Maya slid in with two mugs she could barely carry. Steam moved over the rims like the day, thinking out loud. You should eat, she said, like a fact, not a suggestion. Later, he tapped the lid of the box with a knuckle and felt the metal answer. We walk this in, eyes open, mouths closed. Reed met them at the door, tea loose, coat that knew weather. Quiet route, he said. No hero turns. If a camera wants a face, give it the side you can discard. They drove. The city wore its glass like a good lie, bright and unhelpful. At a light, a bus sighed, and a cyclist slapped the trunk with a gloved hand. Reed didn't react. The car heater breathed last night's coffee into the morning. In the back seat, the lockbox thumped once on a pothole and settled like an animal deciding to behave. In the lobby of the governance tower, the air was refrigerated to money's idea of virtue. Citrus in the vents, stone underfoot that made shoes tell truths. The receptionist smiled with exactly one tooth less than perfect. Carter set the lockbox on the counter like an altar object. Delivering chain of custody, he said. Signed, read aloud. The door behind her sighed open. A man with salt at his temples and a suit that wanted to be obeyed stepped through without asking permission from the room. I'm David Roven, he said. Let's do this somewhere that doesn't invite spectators. The conference room had a slate table and a view that pretended the river had manners. On the far wall, a digital butterfly pulsed ticker symbols, moving through glass wings like fish over a dam. The green was too green. Carter turned the lockbox so the seal faced the light and opened the lid. Inside, the mirrored disc lay in its sterile sleeve. The bagged drive wore signatures across a red seam that couldn't be resealed without confessing. He placed the receipt form by the disk and slid a pen across paper. A second door clicked. A woman in a gray cardigan and flats that knew stairs came in and chose a chair half a step from the wall. She carried a notebook with bent corners. She looked tired, the way diligent people look tired. Twice lived in, once ironed, Rowan gestuurd, Claire. Compliance. Her eyes went to the hash list first. Not the maps. She didn't touch it. Just read the columns like a nurse, reading vital sign. Ledger at each hop, she asked. The nail at her index finger was bitten tidy. Right once, Carter said, mirrors sealed. You'll get transit and signatures. We didn't touch what the law shouldn't. She nodded once and reached for the receipt. Rowan set his palm on the paper before her pen found it. You realize the narrative risk, he said. The smile was small, a learned feature. Markets prefer restraint. The lights dipped one breath and returned. On the wall, the butterfly's right wing stuttered. 5 tickers freezing before the loop caught again. Somewhere in the building, a generator cleared its throat. Claire looked up at the wing and then at Carter, and then at the line where her name would live. Chain continues, she said, and signed, rowing without the boat's vote. 2 partners arrived on the second gust, one tall with a folder that wanted to be a blade. The other, holding his phone like a lit match, he planned to keep from burning his hand. Authorization, the tall one said. Gravity, Carter said. Entrapment. The phone holder announced at his glass rectangle. You and your outside help placed a Trojan. You'll learn about remedies. Attribution. Carter said, you opened the door. You carried the plate inside. Run that sentence until it helps. Claire slid the signed receipt to Rowan. You sign, she said. In the neutral tone, used to arrange bodies in a triage, or you'll explain to the U.S. attorney why you chose not to acknowledge possession. The tall one's mouth did an expensive thing and stopped. Rowan signed. He did not press hard. He did not look at the butterfly. You have an hour, he said. Then you're out of my building. I was aiming for less, Carter said. In the elevator, a woman hugged a banker's box full of printouts. She stepped forward, stepped back. He shows stairs. I need air, she said to the metal. On 8, compliance glowed with copier heat and effort. Claire passed through, notebook at her hip like a holster, eyes on her lane. She did not look back. The lobby had acquired a hush you can't order and can't ignore. The guard watched a courier argue with a receptionist about the definition of legible. Carter signed the visitor log and added a period after his last name. Habit. Small control. Outside, the wind off the river tasted of iron and old rope. Reed eased to the curb. Eyes on glass. Doors. Corners. They cry, he asked. They remembered how, Carter said. He placed the lockbox on his knees. Empty now. Heavy anyway. They took the turn along the water. Ahead, a squat, concrete building sat behind chain link, and a sign that promised continuity to people who believed in brochures. Unmarked vans had learned the address. Blue windbreakers moved like a verb. A manager in a puffer vest argued while retreating, his body already obeying the warrant he pretended not to respect. They parked a block away and watched. A rack rolled into air. Condensation bloomed along machine faces like panic sweat. An agent with gray hair and a camera leaned in, laid a scale card by a port, and photographed the mouth of the thing like a forensic dentist. Someone read serial numbers into a recorder that still believed tape had a destiny. Reed's unwired phone buzzed once, the kind of noise people spend careers chasing. He listened with his eyes. Basement blinked when the nets shifted. He said, "They found a floor under the floor. God bless sloppy pride." Leon slid into the back seat without opening the door, which didn't seem possible until he was there, smelling like wind and coffee older than ethics. He handed over a print, warm from a machine that had worked too hard. The middle line carried its own confession, admin override mon, enabled, souvenir. He said, they labeled a junction, butterfly, upstairs. Cuter in theory. Carter felt the word settle behind his ribs like a hinge-finding seat. They'll call it a misunderstanding. They'll call it a drill, Reed said. They'll print it on letterhead and frame it in the hallway. They looped the block and fell back into traffic. A pedestrian bridge rattled paper butterflies cut from ledger sheets, columns of debt sliced into wings and strung on wire. Numbers whispered when the wind moved. At a red light, a bus needed the street. A kid on a skateboard carved the double yellow with a faith no helmet could earn. The call came as if the city had scheduled it a number without a name, the voice exact. "Mr. William," it said, smooth, practiced, bored by panic. "You enjoyed your tour. Some rooms give themselves away." Carter said, "You're going to lose the board." The voice said, "Consolidation is mercy in a better suit. I don't know what I'm keeping until you tell me I've dropped it." Carter said, and cut the line because letting it end on the other side would mean something he wasn't giving. They took a diner with a bell that had seen better mornings. The counter smelled like burned sugar and old vinyl. The waitress called him on without meaning it, and poured coffee like a witness. Maya stirred cocoa until the spiral made a small galaxy. She didn't look up. "He'll try the board," she said. "He'll try what he owns," Carter said. Back at the office, the air had learned to carry statements. Ellen stood by the glass with a draft that wore harmless verbs. "We are cooperating," she read, grimacing. "We value integrity." "We?" "Strip the sermon," he said. "Say what we did and where it's going. Put a phone number there that rings." She wrote it down, the way you write something you don't want to argue about later. Marcus on speaker treated commas like devices, and devices like witnesses. Reed spread receipts in a neat fan. Claire's tidy signature anchoring the edge. Maya perched on the cabinet, knees up, tablet on her thighs. She drew a map that only looked like a butterfly if you knew what arteries were. "They'll try to write you out of it," she said. "Then we go smaller," he said. "We keep the nouns. We let silence carry the adjectives." The board tiled onto the laptop like postcards from different climates. Delay cut sentences into bone. Elliot smiled, his old smile. "We appreciate urgency," he said. "We're evaluating strategic partnerships that stabilize. We will not be absorbed." Carter said. The room went still in pixels. "We will open what needs opening and keep the lights on while we do it." Duty starts with the living, not the line. A legal face, tilted into its own square. That's a romantic definition. It's one you can audit, he said. They closed the call with no handshakes to pretend with. The windows reflected the room back at itself. The lamp ringed the piano lid like a low moon. Reed's phone thrummed. Riverside coughed up a shredder full of confetti. He said, "Agents are gluing invoices back together with acetone and prayer. Self-destruction sauve labor." Marcus said. On the receptionist's blotter lay a package no one wanted to claim. Heavy stock. Wax seal pressed clean. Wings closed. The receptionist stared at it like it had learned her middle name. Carter put on gloves because rituals keep you honest. The letter opener lifted the wax with a non-committal pop. Inside, a photograph that didn't belong to any building here, two figures at a lake that remembered how to be glass. A piano shadow on a porch, a boy with his hands on middle C. The ink note across the bottom chose lowercase like intimacy, asterisk. This is what you're throwing away. Consider another door. Asterisk. A butterfly sketched in the corner, wings shut. Maya's fingers hovered over the image and didn't touch. They were in the house longer than the lens, she said. Not a question. He thinks memory is a lever, Carter said. He slid the photo back into the envelope and set it on the shelf with the stamp facing the wall. Snow started again, thin, angled, undecided. The radiator in the hall ticked once, twice, then chose a tempo. Josephine placed bowls on the counter like chess pieces and did not comment on the gloves in the trash. Afternoon, Ellen said, checking her watch and the sky. They'll dress the trap up as stewardship. Let them, he said. We'll keep the receipts. He went to the piano and lifted the fall board. Middle C rose, touched the ceiling, came back, changed by wax and winter, and the kind of day that makes you older. He held it long enough to feel the room decide it had heard what it needed. Then he let it go. On the wall, the digital butterfly downtown flickered in someone else's building, then smoothed, then pretended nothing had happened. In the hallway, the lockbox sat open and empty, hinge bright, ready to hold whatever came next. Outside, the paper butterflies on the pedestrian bridge rattled their ledger numbers and stayed on the wire. The conference room kept a high-altitude chill, the kind money installs to make voices tidy. Light came in white and hard, turning the walnut table into a calm lake. No one swam. The tray of coffee smelled expensive and overdone. Maya's interface filled the wall. Night sky blue pricked with slow pulses, threads joining like capillaries. At the center, the decoy sat quiet as a star that knew its audience. Recorders live, Reed said. He tapped the mic once and read the catechism. Date, time, participants, and of two heaven stations, two are come, two devices, purpose. Paper waited beside him like obedient law. Carter stood behind Maya's chair with his hands on the backrest. We don't touch content, he said. We count footsteps. Maya nodded and launched. The sandbox woke. The bait lifted its head and asked to be admired. On the screen, a node flared downtown gray to arterial red as a management laptop opened what it believed it deserved. First bite, Maya said. Reed slid a sterile drive into the right blocker. The LED went steady. Hashing, he murmured, reading the numbers into the mic like coordinates of a storm. The route fanned, office block on 57th to a cloud broker with glossy ethics. Back through a compliance proxy that called itself Absolution. Out again toward an address that preferred islands to questions. No content, only envelopes brushing light. The ledger wrote itself to worm white clicks, permanent humility. Ellen slipped in with 2 coffees and a face that made decisions stand straighter. She leaned to the map, found the diagonal that worried her, and said, "Name the hop in nouns," then faded to the door before anyone could hand her adjectives. More flares. Shorter. Hungrier. A partner's desktop gulped. An analyst's home Wi-Fi. Took a secret like a child hiding candy. A staging server, named Harmless, asked to be forgiven in advance. They're passing it, Reed said. Let them brag. Carter said. The printer coughed out narrow strips of math. Marcus initialed without looking, the lines perfect from practice. The room settled into a rhythm. Hum, click, pen, breath. At the midpoint, the bait paused and flashed a seam meant for arrogance. No one in the other building believed in seams. They believed in inevitability. It made the work go faster. Second copy, sealed. Reed said, and the clear bag crinkled like a confession that had chosen plastic. Close the eye, Carter said. Keep the ears. He wasn't asking for mercy. He was asking for control. Maya dimmed the constellation. The lines remained like veins under skin. The room exhaled an inch. Take a walk, Reed said. They went east. The tower across the avenue rose in mirrored indifference. Lobby air salted with citrus and chilled stone. Security watched with the calm of men who own corridors. Upstairs, the boardroom had been chosen by algorithm. Slate, glass, a bowl of green apples sweating politely under light. Two men waited. Stephen Browning had immaculate gray hair and a smile built to outlast depositions. Beside him, a younger executive arranged his pen like a blade. Mr. William, Browning said, warm as a coat he'd never wear twice. Coffee. I brought paper, Carter said. He set a single page under the light and slid it forward. Path. Endpoints. Times. Your building. The younger man smirked without originality. Reckless claim. Advanced screening, Carter said. Browning read without touching. Outside the glass, the river, pretended current, was a choice. Inside, the HVAC whispered a lie about comfort. Assume a hypothetical, Browning said. An employee makes an error in judgment. How do we correct it without inviting a bonfire? You disband the shells, Carter said. Shut the pipes. Walk 3 machines into the U.S. attorney's office and say, Times please asterisk. Bring donuts. The younger man exhaled a laugh that didn't survive the room. Cute. Practical, Carter said. Courts like pastry. Browning lifted the page at last. Careful, as if paper bruised. You carry yourself like a man with options, he said. I do, Carter said. One is bringing this here first. You're here because you want an audience, the younger one said. I'm here because your phones are about to sing songs you don't like. Carter said, I thought you'd enjoy the chorus. Silence arrived with its coat off. The building's hum slipped into the gap. Ducks. Hydraulics. A faint tick from an art piece set to rotate images no one had asked for. We'll review, Browning said. You have until tonight, Carter said. He placed a second copy on a side credenza. The way people leave candles in certain churches. Council already has the capture. This is courtesy. Interesting word, Browning said. It's respect when you're late, Carter said, and didn't offer a hand. In the elevator, his face came back to him in chrome. Older. Awake. Carrying room. The lobby stone let shoes tell the truth. Outside, steam rose from a grate with the breath of old engines. Reed bought waters. They didn't drink from a bodega cat who ran the register. He tried manners first. He said on the sidewalk, fear dressed for work, or work dressed for fear. Carter said, the tower reflected a sky refusing to commit. Back at the office, the receptionist didn't touch the envelope. Heavy linen. Red wax seal. Butterfly wings closed with cross-hatching so crisp you could price the stamp by feel. She watched it sit on her blotter. The way people watch a glass on the edge of a table. Carter pulled on nitrile gloves because ritual keeps the day in one piece. The letter opener found the seam and the wax gave with a clean, small pot. Inside, not a threat, a date and a place, written in the confidence of someone who expects obedience from weather, Battery Park. 11. Bench facing the river. Come alone. Do not bring the girl. Underneath. A butterfly drawn in a different hand. Wings shut. Maya hovered in the doorway with her sweatshirt sleeves over her wrists. He wants you on his ground, she said. He thinks it's his, Carter said. He held the paper to the lamp. Fiber gleamed. Money leaves residue. Reed leaned in, sniffed the ink like a man who trusts smell over signatures. Bespoke stock. Reed said. We can backtrace the stationer. Do it. Carter said. Ellen appeared with coat hair and the afternoon on her cheeks. Ops is running on pens and paper, she said. I'm collecting hate mail from engineers who love keyboards and understand why they can't touch them. They'll forgive you when the trucks move. Carter said. They'll forget me when the trucks move, she said, and welcomed the thought. They slid into the war room's light. Maya reskinned the console until it looked more like a planetarium than a crime. Reed checked seals with gloved thumbs. Marcus joined by speaker, voice flat, with the discipline of a man who puts commas between disasters. Delivering a courtesy copy bought us 5 hours. Marcus said, at 8. The government becomes the adult in the room. Between now and then, Carter asked, will let Greed write in ink. Marcus said. They watched. The decoy pulsed once, twice, then stilled as if listening for footsteps. The Midtown node woke again. A second endpoint lingered longer. Execution latency written in impatience. Off-island, the relay breathed. On their side, the ledger stitched. Claire, Maya asked. Eyes on the map. Ask for mirrored copies like a person who enjoys keeping her job and sleeping. Reed said. Spine intact. We owe her flowers we won't send. Send silence. Josephine called from the doorway, a towel over one shoulder. It says more. Twilight thinned the glass. The buildings outside became shadows, preserving secrets for later. Inside, the hum settled into a lower register, like the building agreed to be serious. What if he doesn't show? Maya asked, chin to chest, voice small enough to hide. He will, Carter said. How do you know? Greed hates being late, he said, and didn't have to mean only one man. They broke long enough to let Josephine put bowls and bread in front of them and threatened to revoke privileges if anyone apologized for being hungry. They oughta like mechanics quiet, fast, grateful for heat. After, Carter went to the piano and lifted the fallboard because the room needed wood to answer all this glass. He pressed middle C. The note climbed the drywall, touched the corner where light pooled, and came back wearing the day. He let it D. In the reception area, the wax seal lay in 2 neat halves, like punctuation, waiting for a sentence. On the desk beside it, the card with the shut-wing butterfly held its pose. The hinge had found its swing. Which way the door went next would be decided on a bench by a river that believed in itself more than men did. Tomorrow, Ellen said. Half a question, half a threat. Tomorrow, he said, and turned the envelope so the stamp faced the wall. Battery Park tasted like metal. Wind pushed the river into a dull chop, and the benches sweated brine. Gulls skated the gusts. Argumentative and thin, Carter sat at the far end of a plank with a split running through it and did what he'd promised, looked alone. He wasn't up on the promenade. Reed became a man who couldn't quite fix his shoe. Down by the railing, Leon turned steam into a pretext at a pretzel cart and never ate. 2 tourists unfolded the same map twice and argued softly in a language that suited surveillance. Under Carter's boot, a stenciled monarch. The color of old pumpkins had faded to rust. Wings shut, resting or pinned. Footsteps arrived with money's balanced soles that understood marble, not mud. The man chose the other end of the bench and left a polite span of wood between them, distance measured like a contract clause. He smelled of bergamot and rain that had never touched him. Morning, he said. Morning, Carter answered. They watched the water pretend it wasn't working. A ferry shouldered across the current in a squat, practical line, carved into concrete, a date no one read anymore. Kept the park honest. You read my note, the man said, eyes on the river. You enjoyed writing it, Carter said. The smile that came and went showed habit more than pleasure. Gray hair, cut with self-regard, face with no wasted motion. Call me what they call me, he said. Monarch. A gull dropped and caught itself, as if the air had been a trick. Reed sniffed once, far away, a signal only people with certain training hear. This isn't a melodrama, Monarch said. It's a market dispute. You put devices in a house. Carter said. That's not a market. Correction. Monarch said. You've built something elegant and slow. The street hates one of those words. A water taxi sawed the distance. A jogger exhaled past them. Expensive fabric, whispering like paper. The bench clicked. Old bolts acknowledging new weight. I came with a door. Monarch continued. You sell the pieces that bleed. We make them profitable. You get a title that sounds philanthropic. A fund named after some virtue. You go raise a child. We go raise multiple. Everyone sleeps. Carter watched a toy boat, abandoned and sunburnt, snag against a wet knot of branches and plastic yellow. Stubborn, refusing to sink. You don't want pieces, he said. You want the story. Narrative is currency, Monarch said, not unkind. You can spend yours here, in the open, to prove a point, or you can spend it somewhere with weather. Your choice is cosmetic. Wrong door, Carter said. Monarch's gaze did a neat quarter turn. Pale eyes, thoughtful in a way that didn't include regret. You think endurance is a virtue, he said. It's often just a hobby for men who like work more than outcomes. A child laughed behind the statue and swallowed it when the wind changed. Leon unfolded napkins he didn't need. Reed wiped nothing from a sleeve and tied his lace again. Shut down your shells, Carter said. Deliver 3 machines. 2 names. You get embarrassment. Not heat. Monarch chuckled, a single crack of dry wood. Confession is theater for the devout, he said. I sit on boards. Silence, not performative, settled between them. The river did the talking with its shoulders. The cold negotiated the skin at the back of the neck, and one, you're going to lose what you think you've saved, Monarch said finally, voice low. Regulators prefer clean stories. Consolidation, alignment, you'll be diluted into a title. The girl becomes a paragraph to make their filing humane. Your resistance buys you a footnote. Footnotes live forever, Carter said. Only if anyone bothers to read down, Monarch said. He stood, buttoning his coat with ritual precision. From an inside pocket, he placed a small white card on the bench between them. Embossed butterfly, wings shut. When you tire of myth, he said, call. He walked away without looking back. He counted cameras without turning his head. He missed none, and all, for a half-minute, the bench didn't remember either. Man, wind pushed grit across the path. A wrapper fluttered like cheap applause, then jammed under the leg and stilled. Carter pressed his thumb to the butterfly's spine until the card warmed and the image went slightly blind. He slid it into his coat. 15 cameras, Reed said, passing at a jog. 5 honest. 10 for show. He thinks he's the river. Carter said, he's a pipe with PR. Reed said, and didn't slow. They split the park like strangers and reunited 3 blocks north, where the city stopped pretending to care. Traffic laid on the horn without nuance. Steam lifted from a grate like breath from a tired god. They turned their coats to the wind and let the island move around them. The office took them back with dry heat and toner. Josephine's cocoa waited on low flame. A note under the pear magnet read, asterisk, eat before you argue, asterisk. They didn't own his desk. The broken wax from yesterday's seal had dried into 2 commas. The card sat face up beside them, wings shut, embossed to insist on touch. Maya stood with a legal pad and a pencil she'd chewed to truth. He offered a door, she said. He offered a frame, Carter said. We'd live behind the glass. She nodded but didn't agree. "He knows you," she said. "Too much. He knows how to inventory." Carter said, "Knowing isn't the same as keeping." Reed hung his coat, shook the cold out of his cuffs. "Windbreakers are staged," he said. "Warrants warming. The river site has a false floor. They'll find it because someone labeled Pride with a Sharpie." "Claire," Carter asked, "still employed?" Leon answered, arriving with weather on his collar. "Still writing. Chain continues like a prayer for secular times." Maya set her pad down and slid a new page across the table. The sketch wasn't art. Not first. Battery Park. Sight lines. Exits. Cover. Then the lines had turned into something else. While she drew the Bates path rendered as a butterfly turned inside out. Veins where wings should be, eye spots where offices were, a hinge thicker than scale. "He gave you a card with wings shut," she said. "We should decide what open costs." No one argued the grammar. The federal building took paper the way desert takes rain. No drama, all purpose. Carpet that smelled like file boxes. Fluorescent hum, patient, punishing. A prosecutor with flats and a voice built for transcripts read the chain aloud and sealed the worm in a Faraday sleeve with the hiss of a gentle burn. The receipt's carbon stuck to Carter's thumb like ink with an opinion. Outside, east wind salted the mouth. Down by the continuity site, unmarked vans became furniture. Navy jackets moved with boring grace. The gate learned to open for paper. A manager in a vest practiced indignation while his feet retreated through the gap. Racks rolled into air that made their faces sweat. A camera, 8 numbers with a hunger that would outlast jobs. Leon ghosted back to the curb. "Second cage, under the false floor," he said, grin small and all teeth. Someone stamped MON in-house. The agent tried not to smile for the photo. "Self-destruction," Reed said. "Hubris with labeling," Marcus said later, on speaker, and the room allowed itself a laugh that no one enjoyed. The board's emergency call wore its best suit and worst nouns. Boxes on screen bloomed and froze. With the pace of people who have assistants, Elliot smiled like a man saving face, not a company. A guest counsel presented Times Partnership Times, as if the word weren't an apology. "We will not be absorbed," Carter said, clean enough to quote, "We open what must be opened. We keep builds moving with pens and signatures. We teach our own hands to be trustworthy again." "Fiduciary," someone began, "begins with the living," he said, and Ellen muted 3 squares to let the sentence sit. They adjourned the way meetings do when no one wants to admit who just won. Screens went black at the edges, and then in the middle, the room found itself in the glass. A message arrived from a number that had never existed yesterday. Asterisk, "You looked good in the elevator reflection." Asterisk. No signature, no need. He turned the phone face down and let absence do the work. He opened the drawer where he kept the cheap letter opener, balanced its dull weight across his knuckles, and stared at the card. The embossed wings shone where his thumb had warmed them. He placed the card under the lamp and let it cast a small, precise shadow, the hinge between choice and gravity. "Eat," Josephine said, and set down stew that didn't pretend to fix anything. They ate because fuel is not optional. Maya crushed 2 crackers into her bowl with careful pressure, as if fine things turn honest under a palm. Night climbed the windows. The street turned to reflections and weather. Somewhere uptown, an LED butterfly flickered, lost a row of tickers, found it again, and pretended everything was fine. Carter lifted the piano's fallboard and pressed middle C. The note rose, touched the ceiling where light pooled, and came back changed. He added the 3rd and the 5th, because habit read the room first. Then he lifted his hands and let the quiet redraw the edges of the day. Tomorrow, Ellen said from the doorway, coat in her elbow, hair refusing ideas. We make new enemies. Good, he said. Old ones are busy. On the credenza, the wax commas, and the shut wing card made a sentence only they could read. In the glass, their shadows looked like men and a girl deciding what open costs. The heater rattled its old hymn. The house kept their heat like a secret. Outside, snow returned in a finer grain, the kind that sheets rather than drifts. Under the porch light, each flake flashed once, then turned to water. The stenciled monarch on the park bench would catch a layer by morning and wear it like a veil. Wings still shoot. Hinge still holding, door deciding which way to swing. Morning thinned the dark but didn't warm it. The house held last night's cold, like a kept promise. Pipes ticked. The furnace cleared its throat and tried again. Carter stood at the sink and watched steam climb off a mug. He didn't drink, the surface trembling to the hum of the server under the floor. Two things, Reed said from the doorway. Tea crooked, eyes not. Windbreakers want another copy set, and your courier's an hour out. With forms that need your hand, not your opinion. Copy sets ready, Maya said. She slid onto a stool with a tablet and a stack of Write Once discs bagged like organs. Sleeves help over her fingers, hair pinned with the one-winged clip that refused symmetry. I mirrored the watermark across a second decoy. It wears a habit only a certain kind of thief loves. What habit? Carter asked. She flicked her wrist. The wall screen woke to a diagram clean. Spare. Mean. Miles always left a trailing semicolon in timer utilities, she said. Saves compile. Rex. Sleep. I threaded it into the bait. Anyone who's trained under him will see the fix and think they're smarter than me. They'll brag with their hands. Reed's mouth bent. You terrifying little person. Someday, she said, not smiling. The day smelled of lemon oil and burnt coffee. Josephine moved through the kitchen with a spoon like a gavel. Eat, she told all of them, depositing toast where arguments wanted to happen. Sugar keeps truth. Standing up. They ate standing. Butter softened. News crawled mute across a corner screen. Boxes on dollies. Jackets with 3 letters. A river that had stopped pretending it wasn't a conveyor belt. The courier arrived with winter on his cheeks and a canvas bag shaped like duty. Reed signed his palm computer and made him initial the carbon the computer was designed to replace. Chain, Reed said. A catechism, chain. The kid repeated, not knowing he'd joined a religion. Downstairs. The vault breathed coal. Cinder block. Sealed racks. A workbench with scars. Fluorescence buzzed in an insect key. The degausser slept in its foam bed, like a tamed animal that remembered teeth. Recorders live, Reed said. He tapped the mic. Date. Time. Location. Participants. He didn't need to look at the clock to be exact. Marcus's face glowed grainy from a tablet propped in a clamp. Say the words, he said. It keeps ghosts out of affidavits. Carter put his name where names go. Felt tip on coated paper. The ink sank and stayed black. He rubbed his thumb against forefinger. Cold. Grit. A hint of metal. Begin, he said. Maya woke the sandbox. Then the decoy. Code uncurled like a cat that trusted only clocks. On the second monitor, a lattice of lines drew itself. Nodes blinking slow. Roots threading a shape you could call a butterfly if you were feeling unkind. She anchored the watermark in the bait's shadow and set the ledger to write on the warm disk with the patience of a good nurse. Hop 1 will think it's early, she said. Hop 2 will say, we're geniuses. Hop 3 will order lunch. Reed slid a sterile SSD into the write blocker. The green LED steadied. He read the serial digits into the mic as if he were measuring a wound. Copy rolling. He said, "Do not touch content." "Never do," Maya said, and meant at least half of it. The bait asked the room for nothing, and the world for everything. It breathed in the sandbox, then stepped out through a door that only people who believe in their own immunity recognize. On the wall, the first endpoint blinked a slow arterial red. Midtown, management build. Authority baked into the user string like a family name. Hungry, Reed murmured. Hi, Maya whispered to the map and pinned the route with a neat white star. Another endpoint flared. Staged server. A home laptop that wasn't supposed to, but did. The decoy executed just enough to stain itself with proof. The watermark wrote its small truth like a signature in the margin. The ledger clicked in the earphones, tiny chuffs that felt like a heartbeat taught to keep record. Carter watched and did nothing, which is not the same as being passive. He held the back of Maya's chair and let the cold wake the bones in his hand. There was work he could do here, and work he couldn't. The piano key in his skull vibrated once, a remembered middle C, then settled. Bags ready for first mirror, Reed said. Plastic opened with a medical sound. Footsteps on the stairs. Ellen ducked under the roll-up gate, with the weather still on her hair. Ops is running on pens, she said. No one's happy. That means it's working. She saw the map, saw the stars, let out a breath like she'd put a box down. Compliance, Carter asked. Claire sent 2 words. Ellen said, asterisk. Narrative humidity asterisk. She grimaced. They literally mail themselves instructions on how to fog regulators. Maya made a face that wasn't for anyone's benefit. I prefer rain, she said. At least it picks a side. The copy finished. Reed sealed the mirror in a clear sleeve and signed across the red seam with a pen that would outlive this building. Marcus made him read the hash into the mic twice, then made him print it because paper smells like responsibility. Above them, the house breathed. Somewhere a pipe expanded and forgot. The fluorescence wavered a blade width, the kind of dip that makes animals look at doors. The intercom crackled a voice from upstairs, shaped by distance and discipline. Josephine, you have paper fumbled a delivery, she added. Softer, heavy paper, smells like money. Reed looked at Carter. Carter looked at the map, at the bait's small pulse, at the arc towards an offshore relay that thought it had an alibi. Hold capture, he said. Do not blink. I never blink, Maya said, lying beautifully. Upstairs, the kitchen light made a clean rectangle on the table. In the center, an envelope the color of old teeth. Wax seal pressed with a butterfly so crisp you could feel the price. Wings closed. Gloves, Reed said, already handing them over. Carter pulled the nitrile tight. The room waited the way rooms do when they understand story without needing subtitles. He tipped the flap with the cheap letter opener he used for bad news and utility bills. The wax gave with a quiet pop that sounded like a knuckle cracking. Inside, linen paper held a smaller packet folded like a chapbook, a hint of something sweet and expired violets. Maybe. He slid the packet free with 2 fingers. A photograph, not a copy. Fiber print, slight curl at the edges from a life in a box. He and Anna on the piano bench, in light that had chosen them, her head on his shoulder, her hand over his on middle C. The old nick in the fallboard, a crescent under their wrists. On the reverse, neat handwriting in an ink that bit the paper. Asterisk, this is what you're throwing away. Taped beneath it, a scrap of staff paper. 2 bars, key of C. A single note circled 3 times. Middle C. A small arrow. Below it, a message that felt like breath on the neck. Asterisk. Consider trajectory. No threat. Worse. permission masquerading as care. Heat left his face so cleanly it felt like air had been pulled out of the room. He set the photo on the table because his hands asked for flatness. The mug beside him trembled a ring into the wood. Reed stayed 2 steps back. The way you do around a wire under tension. Ellen looked at the ceiling to keep from looking at him. Josephine folded her dish towel smaller, then put it down before it could become nothing. Maya didn't speak. She walked to the sink and turned on cold water, and watched it run like she was teaching herself how to count. When she did look, she looked at the staff paper, not the photo, and her mouth went thin. "He thinks this is charity," she said. "It's inventory," Carter said. The words came out sanded. "He catalogues. He labels. He assigns value and calls it love." "Do we tell the Bureau?" Ellen asked. "We log," Reed said. "We bag. We send a copy." He palmed a small evidence sleeve from his inside pocket and held it open. "Chain." Carter slid the photo and the notation inside, left the envelope on the table like a hull after the cargo's been lifted. He signed the sleeve. Slow, readable. The Sharpie squeaked. The sound felt obscene. Below, the vault chirped twice Maya's chime for appetite. She called up, "Hop 3, manager subnet." They're sharing the file like it's a cigarette. Copy rolling. Marcus's disembodied voice asked from the tablet on the counter. "Rolling." Reed answered, "We are upstairs a minute." Down in 2. Carter placed his ungloved palm over the place where Anna's head rested in the photograph and felt nothing but paper and the ghost of warmth his own hand gave. He lifted his palm, and the image didn't change. That was the cruelty of images. They held a pose against the living. He looked at Maya. She didn't flinch. The angle of her chin had settled into a choice. "We go back down," he said. "Together," she said. They carried the envelope debris to the vault because procedure is a boat in bad water. Reed photographed the seal before it forgot it had once been whole. Marcus dictated a note in a voice that a transcript could trust. Ellen wrote the time on a yellow pad no one would throw away. On the wall, the map had fattened 2 more endpoints. One at a suburban IP with a credit score and a hobby. One labeled "in-house" with a euphemism for continuity that made Marcus snort. The watermark glowed in the ledger like a vein under thin skin. Maya hadn't moved from the console. She didn't ask what was in the envelope, which is its own kind of love. She tapped the screen once, a tiny benediction. "We're past midpoint," she said. "We can close the eye and keep the ears." "Close it," Carter said. "Let them believe. Save the sound." Reed sealed the second mirror and stacked it on the first. The plastic sleeves made a quiet against each other like pages of a hymn. He labeled the bag with block letters. A tired future would praise. "Courier in 30, he said. "Marcus wants the case on a desk that still believes in oak." The Degausser's case sat open on the shelf. Coil dormant. Lidahar. Hinge bright. Carter felt it from across the room, the way a man feels a note in his chest before the piano's played. A tool waiting for a purpose you don't survive. Unchanged. On his way out, he passed the rack with the family tape, white label, his handwriting. The breath left his lungs and came back colder. Maya saw where his eyes went. She didn't say, "Don't," she said, mild as weather. "We can move it. Before morning, if that's what opens the door." "It doesn't open," he said. "It swings." She nodded once, the way people nod when gravity is not up for debate. Upstairs. Dusk had found the windows and parked. The broken wax from the envelope had dried into a single dark comma by the letter opener. The piano in the study held the same weary nick at the fallboard. He sat. He didn't play. Josephine set a bowl near his elbow and said nothing. Ellen stood in the doorway with her phone in her palm, and a look that meant the world had asked a stupid question. Reed read back the chain one more time to an empty room, because empty rooms are where truth learns to be strong. Maya walked in quiet, stopped by the piano, and rested 2 fingers an inch above middle C. Not touching. Tomorrow, she said. Tomorrow, he agreed. He closed the fallboard gently, hinge, whispering like a secret that had decided to be kind, just this once. The card with the shut wings sat under the lamp, embossed and patient. On the staff scrap inside the evidence sleeve, the circled note stared back with the certainty of math. Consider trajectory. The message had said the vault had the temperature of a kept secret, concrete sweated, steel slicked with a skin of cold, fluorescence buzzing high and thin like insects that wouldn't die. The coil degausser sat in its foam cradle on the workbench dormant. Ugly. Patient. Reed checked corners. Marcus's tablet balanced in a clamp. Camera grainy. Audio clean. Ellen stood with a yellow pad and a pen that had already bitten through 1 page. Maya rolled the stool in with her hip, feet not quite touching the floor, eyes on the map. Recorders live, Reed said. He tapped the mic. Time is 23:09. Location, lower facility. Participants. He read their names into the room like a prayer that believed in witnesses. Carter stared at the rack, labeled in his handwriting white tape. Black block letters. Archive of Family. Middle shelf. 2 drives bracketed by blank caddies. He felt the words more than saw them. Heat left his face and didn't ask permission. Maya didn't look over. She kept her eyes on the screen, on the pale web of roots still pulsing from the decoy. They're chewing, she said. Calm. Small. Manager Subnet. Then a continuity room with a polite name. The watermarks tattooing like we planned. Marcus's voice came tinny from the tablet. Say what you're about to do, before you put hands on it. Carter swallowed. The room tasted like old pennies and dust. I'm authorizing destruction of legacy media that can't risk exposure, he said. Non-business personal archive. Not evidence. Threat surface. His mouth tightened around the last 2 words. Dental. Forms, Reed said quietly. He slid the authorization sheet onto the bench and steadied it with his palm. The felt tip left his name dark. Reed countersigned, then held the page out so Marcus could see each line with the patience of a clerk who knows courts admire boredom. Ellen wrote the time. Neat. Unhurried. Change starts now, Reed said. Drive ID. Carter opened the caddy and eased the unit out. The aluminum bit his fingers. He read the serial number into the mic, every digit sounding like a door closing. Reed repeated it. Marcus did. 2. From 1,000 miles and 1 thin wire away. Maya pivoted half an inch, just enough to see his face. She didn't ask if he was sure. She said, We can walk the decoy on without you for 5 minutes. I need to do this, he said. He set the drive on the coil. The degausser's lid lifted on its stubborn hinge, a bright run of metal that flashed like a small, honest thing. He pressed the power. The field rose through his palms like a low storm. The coil sang. Fine, medieval, hair-prick high. The drive jittered on its own axis, and then gave a tired shiver, like a muscle, unclenching after holding a door too long. The panel needle climbed, held, fell. The smell that came off it ozone, hot varnish, a ghost of burned music stung his throat. First pass. Reed said softly. Again. Carter hit the switch. Again. Again. On the 3rd run, a screw rattled free and skittered across the bench, binging metal. Tiny. Defiant. It spun in a circle and settled against the cinder block, with a sound that was more final than the room deserved. Destroyed, Marcus said into the record. Bag it. Reed heat-sealed the red-lipped sleeve around the carcass and wrote "destroyed" across the face. With a hand that made letters behave, Ellen initialed. Carter signed. The Sharpie squeaked, obscene in the quiet. The second drive waited in its slot like a tooth. "You've learned not to probe with your tongue." Carter reached, stopped. His thumb found the old nick on the fallboard in the photograph that wasn't in this room, and pressed air. Maya's voice was even. "He sent the picture to slow your hands," she said. "Not to save you." He nodded. "Barely." Then took the second unit out. Serial read. Forms. Coil. Song. The needle rose and fell. When Reed sealed this one, the plastic wrinkled tight, an ugly chrysalis, around nothing left to name. Copy complete on the mirror. Maya said to the other half of the night, "Bates' ear stays open, eyes shut." Carter leaned on the bench with both hands and let the edge bite his palm. He watched a crescent of magnetic dust glitter on the steel, each speck taking light like ground wing. He brushed it into a smudge and left the smear there on purpose. Upstairs, the house banged a pipe, a hollow complaint. The fluorescents flicked one blade width and found themselves again. Reed slid the red bag drives into a cabinet and turned the key. The lock clicked with a small, righteous sound. Marcus exhaled in the wire. "You put the match to the thing he thought owned you," he said. It wasn't comfort. It was inventory. Ellen tore a page from the pad and clipped it to the front of the packet. "Delivery route to the AUSA at 9, she said. "Courier number already assigned. We print 3 copies of the chain so no one pretends to forget." Maya dragged the stool toward the console with the heel of her sneaker. The wall screen shifted from the vault to the city's anatomy. Pulses spreading and returning, veins doing what veins do. "The continuity site just hiccuped," she said. "Power dip," then lied about dipping. Reed's old phone buzzed in airplane mode. A body memory. He listened, not with his ear. Windbreakers felt it. He said, "Basement that says, it isn't one. Are hymns making the pews shake?" "Claire," Carter asked. "Texted a period," Ellen said, showing the bubble like a minor miracle. "No words. Says she's breathing." They rode the service elevator up. It smelled like bleach and resignation. When the doors opened, heat hit them in a tired wave. Josephine had set bowls on the table and didn't look at faces while people decided whether to be human today. Carter walked past the food into the study and stopped at the piano. The fallboard was down. He lifted it like opening a lid over a sleeping animal. The nick, small crescent at the lip, held a shadow. He pressed middle C. The note rose, touched the ceiling, and came back, changed by concrete and loss. He let it fade without helping. Maya came into the doorway and stood with her hands inside her sleeves. "I saved a copy of the staff paper," she said. "Not the photo, just the note. In case you forget where to put your finger." "You won't," he said. It wasn't bravado. It was a ledger. Reed's steps in the hall. Quick, then controlled. He set the lockbox on the credenza and clicked the hasp. Muscle memory and law. "Couriers here in 10, he said. "Second, courier in 20. The Bureau wants a parallel because their gods are jealous." "Good," Ellen said. "Let the gods count." They ate because Josephine had ordered them to chew. The soup was hot, the bread rude, the salt honest. Carter's mouth learned how to be a mouth again. No one thanked anyone for anything. The gratitude was structural. Maya's tablet chimed a soft bell. She didn't flinch. "Midtown endpoint passed the file to a home machine," she said. "SSID, name says. Browning guessed." Her face didn't move. "That's either arrogance or someone forgot to lie." Screenshot the envelope only. Marcus said, "No content, no drama." She did. The printer in the corner coughed up a page. Warm. Toner smelling like a 1998 office party. Reed added it to the folder without letting his fingers smudge the black. The courier arrived with a beanie and windburn and a pen chained to a plastic block that had lost its pride. Reed made him sign in triplicate. Ellen photographed his signature with a phone set to airplane, then wrote the file number on the back of the photo, like an aunt would write a birthday. The door closed. Heat rearranged itself. The house took a breath. Carter's secure phone vibrated. A number that had made itself familiar without being welcome. He answered. Let the call sit on speaker. Set the device on the piano. Black screen up. A voice that believed in elevators more than stairs. Warm, precise, soft as expensive leather. You made a choice. Carter didn't reply. You've thrown away the past to make a point about the future. The voice continued. That's theology, not stewardship. Ellen leaned against the door frame, arms folded. Reed watched the hall, not the phone. Maya stared at the keys with a patience that had teeth. You sent me a picture to slow my hands. Carter said, all you did was tell me where you thought I live. You live where I choose to speak your name. Monarch said, unbothered. Practiced. You can call what I built a shell. It's an organ. Cut it out, and the market bleeds. Then you should have picked a body you could live in without stealing. Carter said, a very small pause, the kind that says someone looked up. You're tired, Monarch said. Tired men make romantic errors. The Bureau will consolidate for safety. The board will consolidate for optics. You'll be offered a title which is a corridor. Walk it or be left in the parking lot. I am offering a door. You're offering a mirror, Carter said. He tapped middle C again. Not hard. The note slipped into the call. Small, uninvited. Monarch said nothing for the length of the resonance. Consider trajectory, he said finally, and ended the line. They stood there, the four of them, and a piano that remembered older hands, outside. The night pushed its cold through glass like a debt collector. In the street, a plow threw dirty snow against a higher pile and made a sound like furniture being dragged upstairs. Maya turned the page of her pad and sketched a hinge, not pretty, functional, a pin through two plates. If he thinks the hinge is us, she said, we make the pin out of something he can't buy. Claire, Ellen said, and everything we wrote while nobody was watching, Reed said. Carter lowered the fallboard. Slow, hinge whispering. He looked at the closed lid, saw the room in it, the lamp, the bowls, the people who had chosen this house when they didn't have to. He set the photograph, the copy, not the original in the drawer where the old metronome lived, then shut it, and turned the tiny brass knob until it faced true. Deliveries at 9. Ellen said, back to schedule, back to weather, then the east side with council, then governance at 2. Unless someone sets the building on fire to avoid nouns, let them try, Reed said. Maya gathered her wires and slid the tablet into its sleeve. She paused, then pulled the one-winged clip from her hair and set it on the piano lid. Plastic, scratched, cheap. She adjusted it until the broken wing caught the light and threw it back anyway. For luck, she said. He nodded. For trajectory. They moved like people who understood that standing was work. The house adjusted itself to their new shape. In the vault below, the red-bagged carcasses cooled, and the smear of magnetic dust held its glitter under indifferent light. On the wall upstairs the map pulsed, the watermark sewed, the ledger wrote, and somewhere, a man who loved doors waited in a car with the heat on, making calls about nouns. Carter rinsed his bowl in the sink and left it to dry. He looked at the shut piano, at the clip catching lamplight, at his own hand where the Sharpie stain wouldn't wash off yet. Ink under nail, proof in skin. Tomorrow, he said. No one argued. Morning thinned the dark without warming it. The house held its cold like a grudge. Vents ticked. The furnace cleared its throat. changed its mind. Carter sat with the lockbox on his knee, brass hasp printing a crescent through his coat. Steam wore off his coffee and left nothing but smell. Maya stood at the window and drew two small arcs in her breath on the glass until the pain swallowed them. "We go quiet," Reed said from the doorway, tea loose, eyes not, no side streets. "We walk in, we walk out, paper first, feelings later." Josephine slid toast onto a plate and touched Carter's shoulder for the time it takes heat to leave a mug. "Eat one," she said. "Sugar buys sense." He chewed because she'd told him to, the crust scuffing his tongue back to being a mouth. By 9, they were on the steps of a building that believed marble preserved truth. Air inside was dry as paper. The scanner bleached the lockbox to bones and gave back a grainy coin where the worm disk lived. A woman in flats that knew stairs met them at the counter, badge tilted like it had been clipped while moving. "Hargrove," she said. "Criminal. No hand. Eyes on the hasp. Chain is here," Carter said. He set down the folder, facing her. "Read the numbers for the recorder." Reed tapped the mic once, a small ceremony. Hargrove lifted the sleeve by its edges and read the hash. The next, with a metronome voice that would sound the same at 2 in the morning. Reed filmed the fingers, not a face. When she slid the evidence into a Faraday bag and zipped the mouth closed with a sound like a judgment, Carter let out breath he hadn't been saving. "You'll get a receipt," she said. "Then a subpoena so we can pretend we made you cooperate." A flat smile, procedure's sense of humor. "Docket number?" Reed asked. She wrote it on a yellow receipt with a pen that had belonged to a nicer office and handed it across. "Don't try to be interesting," she said. "Let the paper do that." Outside, the city had turned its noise on. Sirens thought about it. Buses practiced exhaling. The lockbox rode light now, empty as a stage after the curtain. Reed took a longer way to the curb, and then shorter to the next building, whose glass liked to think it was river. Lobby citrus, stone at refrigerator temperature, guards who looked bored, in a way that suggested rehearsal. Delivering to general counsel, Carter told the desk, "You sign ours, we sign yours." 15th, the guard said, and then again like he didn't trust his own mouth. 15th, upstairs, beige, receptionist, carpet, phone, all courteous. The door behind her side open. A man in a suit, cut to imply restraint, stepped through. "Roven," he said, as if he ought to be recognized by temperature. "This way." The conference room had the city for a wall, a bowl of green apples sweating under LEDs. On the far screen, a digital butterfly pulsed, ticker symbols surfing its wings. Carter opened the lockbox, so the seal faced Rowan. He laid down maps, hash lists, the sleeve with its transparent truth. "Courtesy copy," he said. "A mirror's already with the government. Read the chain." A second door clicked. A woman took the seat nearest the glass. Hair back. Glasses smudged where fingers find lenses when patience runs low. She kept her notebook on her lap and her back to a wall. "Claire." "Compliance," Rowan said. A touch of apology in the compliance. "She'll document receipt." Claire's first look went to the columns, not the show. Her thumb tested the wire binding of her notebook like a fence. "Each hash is a transit," she said. "Write once media." 3 mirrored. Carter said, "Envelope only, no content." She nodded as if that paid a small debt. Reached for the receipt. Rowan set a palm on the paper. "You realize the gravity," he said. He didn't look at the sleeve. He looked at the butterfly, as if the wing beat might consult his calendar. "Markets, pensions, people who never get rooms like this. Your structure will be uncomfortable." Carter said, "Your people will be fine." 2 partners swept in, hair that cost time, tie knots with opinions. Who authorized this? The tall one asked. The shorter raised a phone, filming by reflex and calling it notes. Physics, Carter said. You executed. It wrote your name in the guest book. Claire wrote while men threw words. Chain continues. She said, half to herself, which is how faith is practiced. Receipt acknowledged. She slid the page to Rowan. Sign. Or explain to a U.S. attorney why you didn't. He signed. He didn't press hard. He didn't look at his own name. You get an hour, he said. Then you leave. We were already leaving, Carter said. The screen butterfly hiccuped 5 tickers froze. Light dip. The building pretended it hadn't blinked. Claire looked up, then down, then finished the stroke of her pen. In the elevator, a woman hugged a banker's box of printouts like it might break loose and cause a mess she'd have to pay for. The doors opened. She stepped back. Stairs. She told nobody. Lobby again. Citrus and desire. Outside, exhaust warmed in sun that didn't care. Reed pulled to the curb and they slipped into the car that never had a smell of its own for long. They sign? He asked. They did, Carter said. Pretending not to will be harder now. Reed's unwired phone murmured like a memory. He listened to nothing in particular. East Side facility. Windbreakers say the basement that swears it isn't a basement hiccuped when our little bird sang. Good, Carter said. He watched 2 paper butterflies wired to a pedestrian fence flutter with ledgers for bodies and cheap paint for wings. Numbers rattled softly in the wind. His phone buzzed. Unknown number that felt familiar. He let it ring twice. You deliver. A voice said, warm, factual. You think fire climbs the stairs you choose. Fire finds oxygen. Carter said. He didn't use the name the voice liked. Consolidation arrives by noon. The voice went on. You'll be given a corridor called leadership. Walk it. And you can keep the furniture. Refuse. And the market calls you sentimental. The girl becomes a paragraph to make their filing humane. Buy a new metaphor, Carter said. This one squeaks. A small elevator chime ghosted the line. You're a hinge, Carter. Choose a door. The line went quiet. They didn't talk about it. There wasn't anything in the car that didn't already know. By the river, the continuity site shrugged under chain link and indifference. Vans idled without logos. Jackets in Navy moved with the economy of people whose job is to remember detail, and then to prove it twice. They parked a block away. Through the fence, you could see condensation bloom on steel as a rack hit colder air and understood world again. A gray bun under a windbreaker held the camera like a judge. A younger agent read labels into a recorder older than he was. A manager in a vest tried to argue and kept stepping backward, a body admitting what a mouth refused. Leon appeared in the back seat without ever having opened a door, which was an old joke. He never let get old. False floor, he said. Second cage under the nice one. Someone labeled a junction times butterfly, times with a Sharpie. Our friends are photographing the stupidity like it's Christmas morning. Names, Reed asked. Not written, Leon said, handing a warm printout. But this was, in the middle of a cold log line, asterisk admin override mon. Enabled asterisk. The font didn't have room for shame. Carter's jaw clicked, the tiny hinge in his head reminding him how some things open. He wants the credit everywhere except where it counts. He'll get it where it counts, Leon said, just not in his brochure. The wind came off the water and cut through their coats. It tasted like rope and pennies. A rapper tumbled at the gate, clapped itself against wire in cheap applause. On the far bank, a crane lifted a container and set it down like precision was a religion. Claire, Carter asked. Ellen's text arrived. Asterisk period. Asterisk. She held up her phone, and the single dot on the screen felt like breath. Still there, she said. Still writing. Back upstairs. The office had learned a new weather. Phones yelped and embarrassed themselves. The printer coughed pages with toner smell nostalgia. Josephine set mugs like pieces on a board and told people where their hands belonged without speaking. Ellen stood at the glass, reading the headline backward in reflection. Asterisk, strategic review. Collaboration considered. Asterisk. She made a sound you make when a dentist lies. Pastels, she said. They painted the trap in pastels. Marcus had turned the small conference room into a shrine to dullness. Tabs. Forms. Pens aligned north. They can collaborate with our receipts, he said. The rest can collaborate with gravity. Maya perched on the credenza, tablet on her knees, wire coiled under her heel. The map glowed a slow pulse on the wall, like a heart in a dark chest. She didn't look up. They'll try to write you out of the thing you started, she said. Then we get still, Carter said. Loud makes them feel large. Still makes them look at themselves. Leon set a folder down with financials that stank of island air. Shells on shells, he said, and a consulting retainer through a foundation that shares a last name with a gardener. Cute. If you don't have to explain it to a jury, juries love cute, Marcus said. Near two, the grid of faces arrived, delayed and shiny. Elliot smiled the way men smile when they're about to steal your watch and tell you the time. A legal advisor in someone else's tie talked about times, prudence times, and times governance. Covenants times like those were rescue boats. We don't sell, Carter said, voice low enough to carry. We don't feed a predator and call it stewardship. We open what we can. We ship what we must. We keep the lights on with our own hands until the room remembers what hands are for. Fiduciary, someone began. Starts with the living, he said, and muted himself before heat messed with tense. The call ended without applause. Ellen leaned her forehead against the glass and left an oval that fogged, then cleared. Outside, plows. Worried old snow into new piles. A text from a number without a name. Asterisk. You looked good in the elevator reflection. Asterisk, he read it twice. Turned the phone over. Seeds want soil. Maya tapped the tablet and the map breathed. The off-site slowing, she said. Traffic holds but stops bragging. Someone got spooked or fired. Both can be true, Reed said. Carter went to the piano and lifted the fall board. Middle C waited where it always had, a small promise. He pressed. The note climbed the room and came back, altered by paper and heat and the long breath of a day that had decided to become a week. He set the one-winged clip on the lid where light caught the broken edge and threw it back anyway. The hinge in the clip held, the hinge in the house did. The hinge in his chest worked like something repaired with steady hand. Tomorrow, he said. No one argued. The printers sighed. The ledger wrote, on a fence downtown. 2 paper butterflies rattled their ledger wings and didn't come loose. By noon, the light went hard. Winter sun bouncing off glass like it meant it. Carter carried the lockbox like a borrowed animal. The brass hasp tapping his thigh through wool. Reed kept half a step behind. Messenger bag across his chest. One hand open, eyes busy without moving much. The federal building wore history like a permanent coat. Marble underfoot, air dry as paper. The scanner bleached the lockbox to bone and gave back a clean coin where the worm disk lived. A woman in flats that knew stairs met them at the counter. Badge tilted from use. Ozza Hargrove, she said, voice clear enough to be recorded. Chain. Carter set the folder where the light could do work. Read the hashes for our recorder. Reed tapped the pen mic once, a small ceremony. Hargrove lifted the sleeve by its edges and spoke numbers with a metronome calm that made them hold. Seal. Timestamp. Signature. She slid the disc into a Faraday bag. The zipper's hiss sounded like a judgment. "You'll get a receipt," she said, "and a subpoena, so we can pretend this was our idea." Outside, the city put its noise back on. Sirens thought about it. Buses practiced exhaling. The lockbox rode light now, empty and strangely heavier. Reed cut a longer arc to the curb, then shorter to the next building whose glass liked to think it was water. Upstairs, Baigamanas. Receptionist. Carpet. A door, taught to sigh. Rowan ushered them into a conference room where a bowl of green apples sweated under LEDs, and a digital butterfly pulsed across a wall, ticker symbols crawling its wings like ants on sugar. Carter opened the lockbox, so the seal faced him. Maps down, hash list, the transparent sleeve, courtesy copy. He said, "Mirrors already with criminal. Read the chain." Claire from compliance took the nearest chair to the glass, hair back, glasses smudged where patience touches lenses. Her first look went to columns, not theater. Each hash a transit, she said. "Ledger checksum," he said. "Write once, envelope only." She nodded once and reached for the receipt. Rowan set a palm on the paper and tried to smile into gravity. "You realize the market?" he said. "Pensions. People who never get rooms like this. Your structure will get the weather." Carter said, "Your people will get paid." Two partners entered on a gust of self-regard. One tall with a folder like a weapon, one shorter with a phone already recording, and a face built for depositions. "Who authorized this?" the tall one asked. "Physics," Carter said. Claire wrote while men threw words. "Chain continues," she said, half to herself, the way faith speaks. "Receipt acknowledged." She slid the form to Rowan. "Sign, or explain to an AUSA why you didn't." He signed. He didn't press hard. The butterfly on the wall hiccuped. 5 tickers froze. The light dipped. The building pretended it hadn't blinked. Claire looked up, then finished her last stroke of ink. They left with paper in order and warmth gone to procedure. In the elevator, a woman hugged a banker's box, like a life raft, and chose the stairs without asking why. Lobby citrus, winter air. Reed pulled to the curb, and they moved like they didn't owe anyone a conversation. His phone buzzed digits without a name, tone of someone who owned names. Carter let it ring twice. "You delivered virtue in a box," the voice said. "Warm, factual. Monarch, you think fire climbs the stairs you pick. Fire finds oxygen," Carter said. "Consolidation arrives before dinner." Monarch said, "You'll be offered a corridor called leadership. Walk it, and keep the furniture. Refuse, and the market calls you sentimental. The girl becomes a paragraph to make the filing humane. Buy a new metaphor." Carter said, "This one squeaks." An elevator chime ghosted the line. "You're a hinge," Monarch said. "Choose the door." The call died like a light under a hand. The continuity site squatted against the river behind chain link, and a dog walker's indifference. Vans idled without logos. Navy jackets moved with the economy of people who had done this enough to respect boredom. Through the fence, condensation bloomed on server faces as racks rolled into colder air. Straps creaked. Men grunted in that restrained, embarrassed way of people who send emails for a living. Leon slid into the back seat without the inconvenience of a door. "False floor," he said. "Second cage, under the nice one." Someone labeled a junction times butterfly times in Sharpie. "Our friends are photographing stupidity like it's Christmas." "Names?" Reed asked. "No ink," Leon said, passing a warm printout. In the middle of a cold log, asterisk admin override ma, enabled 03. Shirar. Lingba. A font that had never smiled. Carter felt the click in his jaw. That tiny hinge that warns you when rage is choosing a lane. He wants credit everywhere except the credit line. He'll get it where it counts, Leon said, just not in his brochure. Wind pushed rappers into the fence and clapped them their cheap applause. A crane across the river lifted a container and set it down with godlike indifference. An agent with gray hair pulled tight, pointed a camera like a verdict. Another read labels into a recorder older than his shoes. Inventory sheets flapped under a thumb and were made heavy again with signatures. Back uptown, the office had its own weather. Phones yelped and went ashamed. The copier coughed, toner smell and anxiety. Josephine set mugs on the credenza like chess pieces and moved people with looks. Ellen stood at the glass, reading the headline backward in reflection. Asterisk strategic review. Collaboration considered. Asterisk. She made the sound you make when a dentist lies. Pastels, she said. They painted the trap in pastels. We brought receipts. Marcus said from the small conference room he'd turned into a shrine to dullness tabs. Forms. Pens aligned north. Let the windbreakers do adjectives. Maya perched on the cabinet, tablet warm on her knees. The room lit faint blue by the map she'd skinned to look like a night sky. You could subpoena. They'll try to write you out of your own story, she said. Then we get still, Carter said. Loud makes them feel large. Still makes them look at themselves. Leon dropped a folder. Islands. Shells. A consulting retainer laundered through a foundation that shared a last name with a gardener. Cute, he said. Juries love cute, Marcus said. A square grid bloomed on the laptop at two faces delayed and shined. Elliot's television tan. A legal advisor in someone else's tie. Initials where courage should have been. Carter used short words. We don't sell, he said. We open what needs opening. We ship what we must. We keep lights on with our own hands until the room remembers what hands are for. Fiduciary duty, someone began. Starts with the living, he said, and muted before heat could make a mess of grammar. When the call ended, Ellen leaned her forehead against the glass and left an oval that fogged and cleared. Outside, plows worried old snow into new piles. Reed's unwired phone ticked once, one of his numbers going hot. Riverside bagged confetti from a shredder. He said, Agent's got acetone, a lamp, and a grudge. She'll make poetry out of confetti. A message arrived without a name. Asterisk. You looked good in the elevator reflection. Asterisk. Carter turned the phone face down and left it to be a seed or a weed. Coffee, Leon said. The place Claire picked has loud cups and no cameras people believe in. Tin ceiling, brass rail, wooden booths polished by elbows. Claire took the corner with her back to a wall, the exit signs laid out in her lenses like a path, coat gray. Notebook bought with her own money. You get 2 minutes, she said. You get all of them, he said, and watched her watch his hand. I like rules, she said. They got me out of a town where girls don't read in public. I like rules, he said. They keep me from breaking what I want to break. She slid a folded sheet across the table. He didn't touch it. She tapped it with a bitten nail. I can't give content. I can give how, which is sometimes who, a breath. Measured. They run a standing carve-out for Time's off-platform adjudication. Time's pretty words. For Times do it in the dark asterisk. Initials for approvals, not names, but there's a pattern. When a request is stamped Times Mon asterisk, nothing bounces. Mon as in he didn't finish. I'm not your rat, she said. I'm my own conscience. A beat. Their risk memos teach how to speak to regulators so nothing catches. They call it Times narrative humidity. Asterisk. Keep the air wet. Fires don't take. That's poetry, he said. That's violence, she said. and stood before the talk could turn into witness prep. At the door, she paused. "They'll call me disloyal," she said. "That's not the worst thing you can call me. Do you want flowers?" he asked, because Josephine had said it earlier, and sometimes her voice climbed into his. "No," she said. "I want a job when this part ends." Evening narrowed the light to sharp metal. Back at the office, the TV ran silent footage from the river site. Boxes, blue jackets, a partner's blurred face, not quite blurred, a Chiron, asterisk, firm assists authorities in internal review, asterisk, the talking head mouthed confidence. Carter turned the sound down until the room's hum spoke better. Ellen dropped a draft on the table. "Statements out," she said. "They used times prudence times twice, and times together times 4 times. We used times cooperating times once," Marcus said. "That'll feel like a novelty." Reed stood in the doorway with that not quite slouch that keeps rooms honest. "They'll offer you a role called Times Transition asterisk," he said. "Looks like a door." "It's a drawer." Carter went to the piano and lifted the lid. Middle C waited with its small promise. He pressed the note, climbed the wood, touched the ceiling, and came back, changed paper on it. Toner. The faint iron of winter. He let it D. Maya set the one-winged clip on the fallboard where it could catch light and throw it back anyway. "If he asks for a meeting again," she said, "we say no." "We say still," he said. She nodded, small and absolute. In the window glass, the room floated over the city like an X-ray bones. Hinges, a heartbeat in blue. His phone buzzed once more. "Ellen, asterisk board at 9 a.m. They'll try strategic partnership, asterisk." He typed back, asterisk. "We say no verbs with more than 2 syllables, asterisk." She sent a period. It felt like breath. On the credenza, the lockbox sat open, empty, the hinge bright and quiet. He touched the brass and felt warmth from a day spent turning paper into weight. In the street below, a gust lifted 2 paper butterflies wired to a fence. Ledger numbers on their wings rattled and held. "Tomorrow," he said. No one argued. The house exhaled. Somewhere a pipe ticked like a metronome that believed. The hinge in his jaw loosened. The one in his chest did not. He closed the piano lid with care and left the light on in the study, an ordinary lamp guarding a room full of evidence and name. Outside, the air had that metallic taste mornings carry, when something big is going to be told a smaller truth. The night opened its mouth. The plan stepped through. Morning came in thin layers. A gray peeled slow off the glass. The snow left in seams along the curb had crusted overnight. It crackled under tires, and then surrendered. In the study, the lamp burned the same small circle it kept for bad nights and depositions. Carter buttoned his shirt with fingers that remembered other mornings and opened the laptop into a face he recognized and didn't. 9 a.m. blinked in the corner. Squares bloomed. Elliot's even smile. A legal advisor with a tie that belonged to someone who slept better. A row of directors wearing houses behind them. The air in the room hummed at a pitch that made paper thirsty. "We're proceeding," Elliot said, voice pitched to sound calm on television. "Strategic partnership, transitional leadership, durable governance." He had practiced the nouns. "No," Carter said. He didn't look at the camera. He looked at the glass, the way light used it. "We open the books. We ship what we ship. We don't sell our name for a place in somebody else's footnote." "Fiduciary," the lawyer tried, "begins with the living," he said. "We keep people paid and lights on. We don't invite a thief to hold the flashlight." A director in a room with expensive quiet cleared his throat. "Markets punish romance. Markets buy clarity. Ellen said from the doorway, voice low, off camera, and receipts. Silence took the call and stretched it. In Carter's periphery, Maya set the one-winged clip on the piano fallboard so it could catch the stripe of winter sun. Reed leaned in the hall with a legal pad under his arm and a look that emptied rooms of excuses. Elliot's smile twitched, then reassembled. Your role going forward, he said, would be steady ambassadorial. We need a face the street trusts. I'll be fine without my face in your plan. Carter said, then the board will take the vote. The lawyer said, grateful for the rule book. All in favor? No, Claire said from a square labeled compliance. She shouldn't have been in the room, but here she was, hair back, notebook in frame. Before you vote, we acknowledge receipt of a sealed ledger that establishes cause for a criminal referral. We also acknowledge internal documents that instruct executives to alter phrasing to avoid enforcement times. Narrative humidity, asterisk. She said it without flinching. Any vote to absorb the company while under active federal review reads as obstruction. Several squares froze, then moved again, the internet version of a flinch. You're outside your lane, the lawyer said. I drew the lane, Claire said, and signed it. Elliot smiled, deflated to a mouth. We should adjourn, he said. He said it twice. The second time asking the word to be larger than it was. Squares blinked out. The screen went full of Carter's face and then empty of everything. He closed the laptop. The room let the quiet stand up and be counted. Outside, the snowlight made the street look honest. Windbreakers just left the riverside with a calendar. Reed said, phone logs. 2. Our friend likes appointments. He'll call, Ellen said. Had did. The phone buzzed with a number that pretended not to be known. Carter let it ring once, then answered, You're late, he said. Monarch exhaled, like a man inspecting his own breath. You mistake noise for action, he said. You called the government into a room that does not love you. By noon, Consolidation will have a letterhead. You'll be thanked for your service. I'll send flowers. You already sent a photograph, Carter said. He didn't raise his voice. He set his hand flat on the piano lid and felt the grain push back. I returned the gift. We burned the place you thought you owned inside my house. A pause. Static stitched 2 beats together. You destroyed the drive, Monarch said. Not a question. An audit. I chose a door, Carter said. Monarch's tone went clinical. Then you understand cost. You will now witness a demonstration. Of what? Carter asked. But the line had already evolved into something else, fainter, amplified. A conference call grafted under skin. Another voice slid in, bland and local. Conference ID accepted. It said, Rowan present. Good morning, Rowan said into the ether. Carpet sounds. A cough. The hollow acoustics of a boardroom where the expensive fixture hums. As previously discussed, execute the continuity purge. Scope MON. Authorization follows. Carter looked at Reed. Reed's eyebrows climbed half a degree, then reset. Leon, halfway into the doorway now, said nothing. Authorization, the other voice asked. Rowan read a string of numbers. The numbers had the confidence of men who keep vaults. They also had a flaw. The first 2 digits reversed from the template in the internal memo Claire had slid across a cafe table the day before. Monarch's people loved habits too much to respect them. Code rejected. The voice said, Please confirm. Rowan read it again. Slower. The wrong way again. Record. Monarch said lightly, forgetting there was air. We'll correct later. Maya lifted her hand off the piano, as if heat had moved through the lid. She mouthed, asterisk. Narrative. Humidity. Agent Hargrove is going to love this, Reed said, and tapped the old phone that never left airplane mode. A red light bloomed. He didn't smile. cataloged. Authorization accepted, the system said finally, after a shuffle of paper captured by the audio like distant surf. Executing purge in 5, 4. Kill it, Carter said, not to the phone, to the room. Maya had already moved. Keys rattled. A cable caught and released. She killed their side of the call and let the recording finish inside a machine that couldn't be reached with any signal that wasn't a human hand. They stood there, like people do after a near crash, inventorying a body without touching it. The radiator ticked twice. The piano's lid held the stripe of sun. Ellen broke it. "We walk," she said. "We take the recording, the ledger, the chain, and we walk into the federal building like we own the elevators." "Claire," Carter said. "I'll cover her." Leon said. "She made a choice in public. Public can get loud." They moved as if the house had a set of instructions, and they were following its handwriting. Coats, the lockbox with a new weight, Reed's folder with tabs that made sense even if you had a fever. Maya slid the one-winged clip into her hair, then took it out and put it in Carter's pocket like a superstition. "For hinges," she said. The street felt sharper, air with teeth. The federal building swallowed them with marble and fluorescent cool. Hargrove met them in flats and a jacket that had seen stairs. "Short story," she said. "Rowan tried to initiate a purge under a code that maps to Monarch." Carter said. "He didn't sit. We have his voice, the sequence, and the misread digits. Claire can testify to the template." Hargrove looked at Reed's old phone like it was a saint's bone. He set it on the table. She pressed a button. The room filled with the mild horror of practiced voices doing something they knew not to do. When it ended, she didn't speak for 10 seconds. She didn't have to. Paper found her hands. A clerk appeared with a cart, as if conjured. "We'll need sworn statements," she said. "We'll need your courier to cough up his receipts. We'll need compliance." "She'll come," Leon said. "She'll bring a notebook," Hargrove said, almost fond. She turned to Carter. "You are about to be asked to stand down in the name of calm. You will say words that sound like cooperation. You will hand us what you have, and then you will go home." "Home remains complicated," he said. "Most good homes are," she said. "Let us earn our pay." On the steps outside, the light had brightened into a winter that felt more alive than summer hard. Honest, sharp around corners. Reporters clustered at the curb with microphones that pretended to be flowers. Ellen walked into the fray and leaned into the most dangerous camera with the most boring sentence. "We delivered materials and will keep operations steady," she said. "New questions. What about partnership?" Someone called. "No verbs with more than 2 syllables today," she said, and moved the wall of bodies with nothing but posture. They reached the car. Carter put his hand on the roof and left it there for an extra breath. The metal was cold and clean. His phone buzzed. A message without etiquette. Asterisk. "You chose a door," Monarch wrote. Asterisk. "I own the hallway," Carter typed back. Asterisk. "You built it from other people's ribs. We're done lending bones." 3 dots pulsed and vanished. No reply. They drove nowhere for a while. A slow loop around blocks that had watched better men pretend they were better than men. At a light, they idled next to a fence where someone had wired 2 paper butterflies cut from ledger paper. Salt had eaten the edge of one wing. The wind worked them against the wire until the wire remembered it was meant to hold. Back at the house, the mutter of the furnace sounded like a truce. Josephine handed out bowls that steamed and told no lies. Maya took her seat at the end of the table and tapped the one-winged clip against wood until the rhythm passed for thought. "What now?" she asked. "We wait, like we're working," Carter said. "We fix the things we can touch." We let paper do its job. And if paper loses, she asked it like a scientist, not a child, then we write more of it, he said, and we stay. He stood, because the room had started to feel full of names, and he needed a different note. The piano lid lifted without complaint. He pressed middle C. The sound climbed, touched the ceiling, came back with courthouse air and cold metal on it. He let it D. He didn't replace it. Night arrived early, a smudge across the windows that felt earned. Reed fell asleep in a chair with his hands open, which for him was a confession. Leon ghosted out and came back with a bag that smelled like street food and reassurance. Ellen wrote 3 sentences and deleted 2, the remaining one better for the effort. Josephine washed bowls with a force that looked like prayer. Carter sat on the bench until the wood warmed under him. He took the butterfly clip from his pocket and set it on the fallboard where it could catch what light remained. The hinge in his jaw had settled. The one in his chest hadn't. He thought about doors and corridors and men who think rooms belong to them because they knew the contractor. Somewhere across the river, a generator coughed. Somewhere downtown, a recorder made a living of its tape. Somewhere in a lobby, a digital art piece glitched and recovered and pretended it had never failed. He lowered the lid with care until the felt kissed the keys. In the slow reflection, his face looked like a man who had paid and would pay again. Behind him, small and steady, Maya's silhouette held itself where it needed to be. Outside, the wind picked up, and the wired paper wings on the fence strained and held. The house breathed. The hinge didn't squeak. In the end, this story isn't about perfect heroes or tidy victories. It's about ordinary people choosing to stand up when sitting down would be easier. About breaking the quiet that lets harm hide in plain sight. We're reminded that silence can be a soft blanket and a heavy chain. Sunlight, as the old saying goes, is the best disinfectant. When we name what's wrong, when we document the facts and tell the truth plainly, we begin to loosen the knots around our own lives. For anyone living with unfairness, manipulation, or the slow leak of dignity, the lesson is practical. Set boundaries, keep receipts, ask for help, and trust the steady voice in your chest. You are not disloyal for protecting yourself. You are responsible. The story also widens our lens on others. Good people make mistakes. Powerful people can be fragile, and change often starts with one person choosing to act differently today than yesterday. Steel is tempered by fire. Character is tempered by accountability. And yes, you reap what you sow. When we sow courage, clarity, and compassion, we harvest community, self-respect, and a future we can live with. If this spoke to you, if it nudged a memory, challenged a habit, or simply rang true, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your reflections or a story of your own in the comments. If the themes here matter to you, tap like to help them travel further, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of hard questions and honest light. Until then, may your rooms be bright, your boundaries kind but firm, and your nights restful. May you find quiet that heals, not hides. Company that strengthens, not silences. Here's to a little more peace, and the courage to keep it.